probably 5 years ago that I realized that the gas gauge on the empty
the empty?
it'll tell you whether you're which
the
side.
arrow.
I never knew that. I wonder how long they've been doing that.
Forever.
They might not have been. Like when I started driving, I doubt it. We're talking the 80s. Come on.
No, it's
1984. They probably weren't that smart.
No, they had a gas gauge on it. They had
a gas gauge. They might not have had the little
arrow
triangle. They may not have
since the 60s.
Wrong.
No, you don't know that
For a fact.
You don't know.
Google it. I guarantee they've been doing it since the 60s.
You are fake news.
Well, it was after we moved to San Antonio that I learned.
Either way, it was decades before you found
it. It was the new van that we were driving in San Antonio. And I was like, which side's the gas gauge on? And she's like that. I was like, oh, okay. And she goes, it's right there. I'm like, oh. And I was like, I wonder if all over that way. So I looked in my van. I'm like, oh, it's there.
Welcome to Shoot the Breeze, a podcast that celebrates the messiness of life, relationships, and Christianity, featuring my wife Lacey and myself, Nathan. It's creatively titled because it will be just us shooting the breeze, sometimes with guests, while occasionally saying something important. We hope you enjoy. Hello, Scott.
Nate.
So I wanted to pick your brain. We recently did a video for a friend of ours who runs a ministry, Weekday Ministries, and we were talking about community.
Oh, you and I. I went tracking with you then. I was there.
You were there, right?
I was there.
You were the one interviewing me.
Yes, I did. I was trying to remember I was like, did I watch that video? And then I'm like, oh, wait, I think that was Nate. And I think I asked him to come on the show with me. Hey, did you know that I did a show recently where I invited a guy on to talk about community? He ran a ministry called Cultivate. It's amazing. And he wrote a book called Unlove.
Dealing with relationships and living in community.
Back to you.
I wanted to kind of, it was, you asked me off the cuff questions. So I was like, oh no, I hope I got the right answer. So now I have an hour to clarify my answers. No.
There you go.
I wanted to talk to you because you and I we've been in a relationship for almost
going on 15 years.
Going on 15, right? Yeah. And a lot of our experiences in community, and very specifically, we're going to be like talking about church community. And we've had some crazies and good experiences. But oftentimes, like what I've heard, or the challenge that is usually given to organized church, Christianity, whatever, is, well, I don't need other people to speak into my life because I'm a priest in my own household, and
Did Jim Gaffigan teach you voices?
No way.
No, he always does that. Voice.
He always does the high voice.
Yeah.
That's his across the board.
You do like somebody with a cold.
But I was wondering, well, it's my,
that's true.
I'm a professor, and I read a book one time that had a Greek word in
You're
it.
a pastor theologian. No.
So I had a Greek word one time. And anyways, though, about how we don't need community, and how dare the church intervene in my life and tell me how I should live. You know, it's funny. I can't tell the difference between my nasally character voice and my regular voice. It sounds kind of the same to me.
I always sound nasally.
Oh goodness. Okay, so why, maybe I'll just start with this question and see where that leads us, but why, in your view, both biblical view, but then even in your experiential view, right? Like what you've lived, why is community so important? Why is the church in a local expression of the church? Why is that so vital or important in a person's life?
I mean, I always go back to that's where you do real life. And I know that some people are like, who doesn't do real life? Okay. But I'm talking about like vulnerable, real, open, honest, laughing, crying, telling the stories. You know, nobody can tell a funny story that took 10 minutes that week in their life at church on Sunday. You don't have time.
Okay.
You can go out afterwards and have a meal and do it. Or you can come early and hang out and have coffee. But it only, that real life stuff, or like if you're in church and something major's happening and you went through a major pain that week, you can't just turn to your neighbor and start talking. Like that's awkward in a setting like that. Worship is fantastic on a gathering moment Sunday. But it's in those homes, it's around the meal, it's around the table, it's sitting in the back porch, drinking coffee, watching deer run. That's when all the real stuff comes out. That's when people are really real with one another. It has to happen that way. And then you can't listen to whether your church is 100 or 500 or 1,000. You're not going to listen to 75 or 400 or 800 stories and take them all in a given week. But if you got 10 people in a community group or 2 couples over for a meal that week, you can take it all in, and you can actually give something away. So what if you heard 400 stories on a Sunday, people going through stuff? How much could you give away?
Not too much.
Right.
Not too much.
The 2 that, like, whatever you could.
Right.
It's the only place it happens for real.
So why would you... Okay, so you're advocating we need to have smaller, more intentional, more vulnerable places that we can have, like you're saying, real life, real community. So then why... Okay, well, I do have that with my friends, so why do I have to come on a Sunday morning?
Number one, Jesus says so. So argue with him. It's always been the way, even before Jesus walked on earth and formed what is the new church now, the New Testament church on forward. They gathered as followers of God, and then Jesus fashioned it in, hey, you don't need this priest to do all the stuff for you. You have direct access, but you also have spiritual leaders I'm giving you, and I'm calling you to gather and celebrate and worship. And I think it's such a great place to have this weekly reunion, worshiping God, learning the same thing together, gathering together, shoulder to shoulder, fellowship. It's huge. I always liken it especially if I teach membership class or something. Sundays is like we do it weekly, but like your family reunion, like that family you have. I had one side of the family that had family reunions, the other side didn't. But every year we go to Luling. The only people that went to Luling because nobody needs to go Luling. Sorry, Luling. You know. Once a year we'd all gather, and it's just the giant clan of us, and it was fantastic. Uncles, aunties, cousins, fun, running around, all that stuff. You can't do that every night, right? So your home, where you have your family, that's your small caring community. So that's the stuff you do all the time. Around the meal table, you invite a few people in, but then you also have a celebration. So in the same way, I liken that to during the week, you go and have a small caring community, and you just do real life together. And then once a week you gather and you just have this big celebration. You can't live off the celebration, but you do have to have it. I mean, I think it's key. It also keeps us all on the same path as what, because Jesus said, I married the church. Somebody could say, well, my home group is Jesus' bride. Okay. If he really did that. Who you bringing in for that spiritual advisement? And I'm not saying that 25 people meeting at home every week isn't a church,
right?
But
right.
did you get some other input? Did you get a cloud of witnesses seeking the Lord in maturity, going, this is a church according to Jesus? You better have that. If you don't have oversight, you're in trouble.
So what would, I guess, tell me the difference between what I hear you advocating for, and you could correct me if I'm being too simplistic, but is a Sunday morning celebration, but then sometime during the week meeting with a smaller group of people for, you say you call it intentional or real life, but tell me your definition of that. What does that look like for you?
I think you come together to pray, to learn. I mean, I don't think you have to have a 14-point lesson. You don't necessarily have to go through, hey, we're going through Romans this time, although you can. But you're learning together. You're being real together. You're discussing stuff together. You're praying together. I mean, really, Acts 2:42 kind of gives us the framework for that. I think you can do that in a large setting, like on a Sunday gathering, and then you also you put that in a small setting. Like I know on Wednesday nights, like our small group ours multiplied, so you used to lead mine, but now we go to a different one. We didn't divorce. We just grew bigger.
We grew.
But we came together and we discussed what we were doing in church that day. But prayer, fellowship, talking, laughing, all that stuff is part of it. We eat together, we pray together, and then we discuss what the Lord's showing us from that Sunday together. It's real life. On Wednesday nights, I have a group that I lead with another person, and we're walking through Hebrews, but we're being very interactive, and we rarely get through a lesson. And we just, because we'd rather not get through anything to talk back and forth. At the same time that we're doing that and doing more of a Bible study, very interactive, you have a group of guys that meet, and y'all are just opening up life and unpacking stuff. It's the exact same thing, totally different, right?
Okay.
It's a small, caring community coming together to mature and grow and heal and celebrate and relate.
So if
all because of Jesus.
right.
That's always
It's
the
not
key.
like we get together and just yuck it up, which
Right.
funny
You
thing
do.
is that is part of it.
Right.
So in what you kind of like a funnel, okay? The big entry point maybe is a Sunday morning, and you say it's geared more toward a celebratory family coming together,
Right.
worshiping Jesus. Maybe a big idea in terms of like a sermon or
Right.
whatever preaching, but no real vulnerability on the Sunday morning, especially with any large group.
Unless they choose that, like up at the altar with someone or with Jesus, but that's going to be a smaller percentage. I
Right.
think that would be fantastic all the time. I think it's always the healthiest when the altars are full, not because of manipulation of my words, but because of response to the Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit's going to speak to everyone on a Sunday. Whether we hear it is up to us, and whether we apply it. So that's why I love to always pray, Lord, Holy Spirit, when you speak today, help us respond to you, whatever that looks like.
Using the funnel analogy, coming down, sadly, fewer and fewer people get into those smaller, in-depth communities. Okay, so Scott, what would be the difference then? Like you said, we led your small group, being a friend of ours. Well, why isn't that my church? Why isn't that my? You know what? That's our Sunday morning.
Well, for us here, we say that's not a church.
But that's what I mean is like, why? What is the... Because wouldn't that be the church?
It could be in a certain setting if that's what somebody wants, but it doesn't really, I hate to say the word qualify as a church. It doesn't really qualify as a church. There's no, if that was the only thing, there's no biblical setup leadership for it. Where are the elders? Where are the aspects of worship? You better add some stuff in and not incorporate like you have to get a 501c3, but you better, if that's going to be a church, you better begin to function as a church. Hey, I'm the pastor shepherd. These are our elders who are pouring into us. This is where we worship God together. It's not like passing the offering plate makes it a church, but for us, in the real life groups that happen or the Bible studies, they're a part of providing for the people, that small caring community and that growth in Jesus, but it's not set up that way. There are home churches. And we talked about earlier today, Francis Chan and what he helped us establish. And there looks to be a lot of health in that. I'm not there and I don't study it a lot. I was a part of a church in Georgia years ago where it was a cell church modeled after Paul Yonggi Cho's Korea kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so the main thing happened in the homes. What we saw is that 40% went to the homes and of the church on Sunday that gathered.
Right.
So it's like, is it really working?
Would you?
But they were each pastors. Like each of those home cell church guys were called pastors.
Right. But wouldn't you say in an environment like that, and I have so many directions I want to take this, but I'm in an environment like that where, like you're saying, 40% did the home church thing, and what you're not saying is you can't do house church. Right, like that.
Right.
You're not saying that. It's
Right.
just how you be a little bit more maybe intentional in how
Right.
you meet or how you structure your meeting.
Right.
But with that, even a house church, like you're saying, with 40% doing the house church thing or homes, but then what is it? Once a month they get into a big place, or how did they?
We did weekly, which always confused me.
Okay, so you would
A lot
weekly-
do the monthly, which is like, hey, we're gonna do a monthly reunion,
Yep.
gathering, celebration. And
but
then-
most of the work is done in homes.
yeah,
So with that, why? And you said it's not, it doesn't really work, or so. I think I'm maybe misquoting you. But what if deeper intentional relationship is happening, even if it's lesser of a number than what you would say is meeting on a, whenever your reunion is? I'll say it that way.
yeah. I mean, I think that's fantastic. I think
Yeah.
they're all the deepest stuff. I think would be great if they happened in home settings in small
Right.
caring communities. But at the same time, we're just, I mean, really, what has been there's a way God set it up, and then as it grew out, there was a tradition.
Mhm.
So we don't worship traditions, right?
Mhm.
And we don't have biblical verses to go back to and go, well, that's, like our tradition of communion and baptism. That we can find that.
Right.
The traditions that the church established aren't biblical, but man, we better look at them and honor something there, and we better take into account a lot of that, because you're talking Paul, Peter, and John. Those guys,
Yeah.
they kind of knew what they were doing, right?
Well, and even even though we don't have a church service listed out in the Bible, we don't have and we have the benediction today.
Yeah,
Like we did.
this is our 3 songs of worship.
But what is fascinating, all the way.
Benediction. Wow.
What?
I know we don't.
I grew up Baptist.
I
man.
know. I still I had to look up those words and memorize them at one point to know what I was talking about.
So, in the foyer when we would do. No. But I mean, as early back as I think it's the 2nd century,
Mhm.
you have Eusebius listing out an order of service.
No, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
I'm learning.
No, and so you have Eusebius, and it's very similar to what we do today.
Right, and I think we who'd he learn from?
Oh yeah.
Right? So there's a certain thing we better mindfully, prayerfully, just legitimately honor that,
Mhm.
and it better be a group of leaders pursuing and honoring that if you're going to change it.
So we're not advocating for tradition's sake, but also I would say some traditions exist for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
and looking at why do they exist. So a great
Right.
example of this, and you and I have had experience in it, where, well, Scott, I don't think one person should be the one giving the message. Because, like, what if more people in your congregation have a message? And, Paul says,
Mm-hmm.
one brings a teaching and another one, and, and so why do you get to be the only one that teaches us? Right? I mean, that would
Right.
be, that.
Right.
That's often, especially those who advocate for a home church
Mhm.
style. Now, you and I are also very much submission minded, where
Right.
we believe in a submission to an authority,
Mhm.
not just to you,
Right.
to me. It's no. I'm submitted to. So,
Right.
so, but what is your rebuttal? Your in the whole movement, which I don't know if it's died off or what, which is funny because they don't have structure. The whole movement towards, well, the whole pulpit thing, the whole, worshiping to facing the front, and you have the one guy up front.
That always goes so goofy. People that turn around backwards because they don't want to worship a person. I think they're worshiping themselves, but that's just me. Fortunately, that died off pretty quick. Yeah, that was weird. Or the leaderless leadership.
Right?
Remember the movement?
That's what I mean.
So
That's
yeah,
what I mean.
I mean, number one, the phrase is dumb. So
Right.
I don't like it because the phrase is dumb. I mean, it's one of those oxymorons that.
It's like what is it? What's the word? Anti-disestablishmentarianism.
Yeah, you just.
It's like we're organizing to be against organization.
Yeah. But then there's also okay, Pastor, I need to come up and give a word. Right?
Mhm.
I mean, I grew up in that setting. So I grew up in a charismatic, we were at the We weren't Pentecostal, but we were as close as you get with staying maybe charismatic, a little more structured. We didn't jump over things. There were no snakes. Okay?
Is it Mark Driscoll who says charismatic with a seatbelt?
That's what we were. The seatbelt was loosened. Okay, so
it was more like the mom.
So I grew up
arm.
in that as a kid.
Okay.
And it's funny because my dad, military man, officer, all that. And he was like the driving steady force, and then my uncle was like, woohoo! Okay. Which is fantastic. But there were times I was like, people just go, I got a word, brother, and just give him the mic. And I mean, sometimes I don't remember everything. I remember sometimes like, that was weird. And I'd look at my mom and be like, was that weird? And she's like, that was kind of weird. So we never grew. We started out about 50, and when we left all those years later to go to a different church that we were connected to, it was about 50. I don't know if that's right. I mean, I don't know. I was still a kid. We left when I was a teenager. It just felt like it was a little loosey-goosey. And so there, I think structure, I mean, who doesn't have structure in something? I mean, nobody would argue with, we might not like lights and stop signs and but nobody would argue with structure of driving, especially if you've gone to Kathmandu or somewhere in India or Jakarta. I mean, driving through Jakarta, it's 4 lanes and they make 17 out of them. It takes 45 minutes to go around the corner kind of thing. And it's like, because here's instead of a microphone, they gave them a lane,
Yeah.
So structure's not bad. And Jesus had structure. And he was also like, I'm stopping here at the well and we're just going to hang out for a while and do this, because I would guess that God's like, I got 3 years to do what I'm going to do through Jesus. And Jesus was a part of that, obviously. But, and then I'm going to launch something new and bigger.
So you made the statement about growing.
But I'll say this, I also don't believe it should just be one person, always only, the only guy that ever preaches into your life. I don't think that's healthy. For a lot of reasons, I just don't think it's healthy.
Like, tell me, I mean, here's the deal though. You have one guy who has a vision for God. I mean, why shouldn't he lead this movement?
He should lead, but he should lead by opportunity for others. I mean, we're called to be disciples until we die. Mark Driscoll, I love that. My favorite Driscoll phrase.
Yeah.
So I'm supposed to disciple people. So if I'm the preacher, head leader, then I should duplicate myself. Like this person over here is duplicating what they do, whatever it is. But so I should be raising up people who learn how to preach and lead in bigger ways. But if I don't ever give them a chance, then I'm not doing that. So everybody else does it but me. So there's danger, because if I die turning left on 281, which is a very high possibility in this world we live in,
yes.
What happens if there's no one that's ever preached in the pulpit before? What happens if no one's ever had an idea that got taken to the next level? So you give opportunities. You're still the main one. You're still leading the whole thing. You're still responsible to the elder body and to God for leading it, but it doesn't mean you have to be the talking head.
Yeah, but hold on, Scott.
And it creates idol worship.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. This is one of the many resources we make available for free at our website, cultivaterelationships.com. Our resources have helped people grow in their relationship with God and others. We've seen people set free from uncontrollable anger and paralyzing fear. We've witnessed estranged family members be reunited after working through our Freedom Booklet. We've helped people build healthy relationship and coping habits through our coaching videos. And all of these resources are made available for free because of the generous support of people like you. If you would like to become a partner, please visit cultivaterelationships.com/support. Now, I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. God's given you a vision for a movement, for a church, for a people, for a community, whatever you find yourself in. As someone who is a part of that community, it seems wise for me to meet with you because you're the person carrying God's vision for the community. And so what I see it as is, okay, rather than meeting with someone who maybe isn't necessarily as gifted or as visionary or is carrying the vision as you have for the community, I need to meet with you.
But what? So, I mean, I get your sarcasm, but number one, we know that can't happen.
I'm only being real, Scott.
You're fake real. No, number one, that's impossible. We know that, right?
We've heard people say this, though, right?
Right. Number one, it's impossible. Number two, like, what if as a leader, I'm not the best visionary?
Well, then I'll find another church.
Yeah, right. But like, I would highly doubt that I'm the best visionary in this church. I don't think it's my highest gifting. Now, I submit to myself to the elders.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that oversee the church. I'm one of a voice on that board, but I submit myself as the lead pastor, and I'm probably not the best visionary. Or maybe sometimes I'm the best, like, overall general visionary, but in missions, it's that guy. And in, like, reaching new people moving into the community, it's that guy. And maybe over here, ministry to families, it's that lady. So then you go, hey, what do I need to do to help you run with this?
So you're saying,
because I don't have that in me, but man, you got it. I want to support that, and I'm the best supporter because I'm the leader.
But here's the deal, though, is I feel like any mission that I have has to come out of the church. So I need the church to
stamp approval it or do it. I
have a vision that I want you to do, Scott.
Right. And we know this. I remember the famous, I had a skate park yearly episode in Alaska, one person, a youth skate park, and I'm always, but he was like, this is what needs to happen. Y'all pay for it. Y'all do it. Y'all make it happen. I want to go there sometimes. And I would always tell him, man, your vision, your passion, our covering, go. And he'd get angry at me. Finally, he quit the church after like year 4.
One of the the funny thing is, one of the best and most frustrating leaders we've had, first was our friend Dave, and then now you. Hold on.
Wow.
Hold on, though. Let me
David,
explain.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm lumping you both in. Throwing
A
you both in.
wonderful supportive
Here's
missionary.
Here's what I mean by best is very few times do I remember you guys.
Did you say best or worst?
Both.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought you said.
I'll tell you why. So, like Dave, very few times outside of like responsibility as a staff member, you have to do X, Y, and Z as part of your paycheck. But in terms of envisioning for a department or for a plan, like hands off, right?
Right.
Which is also incredibly frustrating because I think we have this view that authority should also tell us what to do.
Right.
And so for Lace, it took us, what were we with the church? 8 years? 8 years, and Lacey was constantly frustrated. And to me, she was very frustrating.
Not going there.
No, but it was funny because you go into a staffing position assuming, okay, they're going to hand me responsibilities, and then I will just check off those responsibilities.
Right.
But when you don't have that and you get hired on, in fact, part of your application process is writing your job description.
I remember.
It's like, well, what do you want to do? And so that's what I mean by it's one of the best environments to be free in terms of, wait, I can do whatever I want. Right? I mean, it wasn't structureless by any means. But the frustrating part is learning how to almost walk in a vision that God's given you and kind of see that birth out of you, like the passion birthed out of you. And that's what I mean by it's one of the most frustrating, because if you have a leader that you perceive, it's a perception, oh, they don't care about me.
Right.
That's the heart, like that's the heart perception that you.
And then
need
what's
to
the
be,
enemy gonna harp on?
Well, you should just quit anyways, right?
Yeah.
But it is hard. Like it is one of those things where it's both the most freeing environment to learn how to walk in the passion gifting that God's given you. But then it's also one of those environments where it's almost like forced, you could choose not to, but forced heart checks,
Right.
And so that's what I mean by it. I think people can perceive these circumstances, especially if they need the good job, like pat on the back, or if they need the checklist.
Right.
It's a very hard environment to grow. Now, I'm not saying...
And we have to be mindful of those people, because
Yeah.
if God says, hey, I need you to help Mr. Checklist Man grow into what I have for him,
Yeah.
we got to help that. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain business people like Elon Musk that I'm a fan of.
Oh, dude.
And so I study everything that I can find on how he leads, hires, and then does that. So he's talking about like, I don't really give a rip about your degree. And he has these 2 questions that he likes to ask in interviews. And it's basically, what are you passionate about? And what are you willing to do to make that happen at our company? And they make a judgment based on that mostly. But then he's like, I hire accountants and analytical people and they can't handle that. So then they get asked some different questions that has a lot of processes and structure. But he goes, they're gonna have to live, like, they can't look over their shoulder for when to put a check mark down, but I have to provide all that for them and give this structure, because that's what they do on this side of life. This side of life, I want you to run and create and feel free. I want you to fail within reason, and then not hide it and grow from it and tell me why that was a great failure and what we're doing next. And it's why we get, it's why Tesla is Tesla.
Well, and you see, it's funny. You look at how much of the news is, the talking points are based on Tesla or Elon's failures.
He loves his failures.
He's trying stuff though, right?
And he doesn't get. He's like, I fail. Okay, whatever.
$1 billion.
Yeah, we have to recall that because the cars, we're rolling through stop signs.
Yeah.
Whatever. Okay, we did it. We're not hiding. He doesn't hide anything.
Right.
I mean, he maybe does, but from a bit.
Like one of his best failures was his truck expose.
Mm-hmm.
How it broke it. Like he promised it wouldn't break and it broke, and he's like, we're gonna have to learn from that.
I know.
Okay.
But I love that because he knows I've got these kinds of workers and leaders. I've got these kind. And then the ones that are going to move my company forward can not only follow me to the, every stepping stone, they have to be running on their own. Maybe I corral some of them back. Maybe I just say, hey, let me know how it's going. But you got to be able to lead people in different ways. But a great leader is okay with people being better than him or her.
Well, I think that's the only way.
If you're not, then you're probably an authoritarian dictator.
I think that's the only way, whether it's a church or a organization or a business or whatever, can grow, is if you're bringing in people either who are better than you or at least you're handing aspects of the business off.
Right.
Church, whatever, organization off to. So what's your advice for people who, bringing it back to the church, go, well, I think my local church should be doing X, or my local church hasn't given me permission to do X.
Just sometimes I ignore them. I get it all week long.
Dude, I get it.
I'll be honest, as a human being, I'm just like, oh, again, or that again. Oh my word. The 4 people who liked that program 12 years ago, whatever. And then sometimes I'll ask the question, like, I get the question about this old play that used to come, and it, kind of had a turn or burn kind of testimony to it, the play, and then you...
Dude, I love that play in high school. Yeah, I said in high school.
And when people are like, why don't we do that? Well, it's like, well, first of all, when I came on staff, they begged me never to do it. So that so that didn't mean that was the answer. I needed to look into it. And then everybody that I talked to that was a part of it is always the same people every year that were volunteering. And a lot of people every person that asked to bring it back admitted to me they never helped. Not ever. They would hand out tickets. That was the most they ever did. And they would show up to watch. And they never volunteered. I'm like, well, that speaks volumes to me. The the 12 people who are saying, how dare we not bring it back, never lifted a finger to help out. And so I'm like, yeah, and we don't really need that. Or the people that are like, why don't we do this? Why don't we do this mission anymore? Well, we just don't. We're not called to be part of every mission, but here's the 14 that we do, because God's called us into these. So I'm sorry if we don't do that one anymore, for whatever reason, or maybe it doesn't even exist anymore. But we have these, or why don't we have this group? Well, no, the leaders, you don't want to lead it anymore, and there's no one for it. We should put a staff member over it. Well, there's no one passionate about it, so then they'd be doing it out of honor and duty. Do you want somebody doing a ministry out of honor and duty alone? It's gonna become very regimented at that point.
How do you draw the line? Because this got me on another thought. How would you draw the line between someone who's passionate over something and something that, I don't want to say needs to be done, because you could say that about anything, but that balance between, okay, we don't have someone to do this. They
get assigned?
Yeah, no. Well, no, you know what? I'll do it out of obligation to the church.
Right.
But I'm not passionate about it.
Right.
But then you fill a role, so the role's being done, but then you have someone over here who's like, I'm really passionate about that, but they don't need me because it's already taken. Well, and you have the person over here who's like, I'm not passionate about it.
Number one, I think if you know, you better, as a spiritual, mature leader following Jesus, get that person. If you know that they want to, and right now this person's just a placeholder, out of goodness and humility, bring them in. I'd rather that person have less quality and be passionate about it, and then you raise them up. Right. You shouldn't, in my opinion. You should never release someone and say, hey, you're good at this, go do it, I'm never going to talk to you again. We should walk everybody through. Some people just need to be checked on sometimes, and some people just need to give their input back. Hey, this is what we're doing. And some, you got to walk with them for quite a while. But I'd rather have a lesser qualified, passionate person than a committed, dutiful person who's just like, I'm doing this because it's honoring.
Do you ever feel like there's certain things in, again, we're talking about a church environment, okay? So do you think there's places in a church environment that almost need to fail to allow people to step into it?
I think it's good. I don't know about fail. I don't think it has to. I think sometimes it should.
Yeah.
But I think the best is either that person lets me know they're passionate, or I go tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, I think you'd be really good at this. Have you thought about this?
No, and I mean fail like maybe something doesn't happen.
Right.
That could or should.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by fail. Like basically it's not happening, or it's not happening well. For other people to, so with that, and it's so hard because you said you get this all the time with people coming in and going, no, the church should do this, or this. How do you as a leader, or maybe as you teach other leaders as well, to come in and go, okay, discern between someone who is gifted and passionate, or maybe not gifted but desire for that, genuine, and someone over here who's like, well, the church just needs to do.
Right.
Like, how do you personally, or maybe how do you teach people to discern between those two?
I don't know that I've ever really thought through that. I think maybe I've just been blessed by God that the people that He's brought in my life, that there's some people that maybe I inherited in my life, or that you could just tell, okay, either God, you got to get them on track, or I'm just letting them be over here. I'm gonna deal with this stuff. But the ones that I get to be a part of them coming into my life and working together, they kind of can figure that stuff out on their own. Like, I tap in this guy for this guy for this. And you just say, yeah, man, that's awesome. I think we're always presenting, hey, we want what you're passionate about. And then we're always, hey, at the same time, I'm tapping shoulders. I'm asking people to come along. And then you got to determine, as Like, does that person is this going to be a year long me really training them, almost interning them to lead this later? And I think I can figure that out pretty good. I've done it for so long, and like even like going back to our Alaska days, the main ministry I had 71 team members, and I was the only guy paid. So I never thought any different. That's just the way it was. Our money went to missions and starting other churches. So I was like, so I knew this one they're gonna probably stay in this little vein right here. This one, man, they're gonna be small groups. This one, I'm gonna raise them up to, man, maybe they can replace me one day. And so you pour in different ways, different people. They're not more important than others. They just maybe have a bigger, broader role, or you recognize that, man, that's a pastor in the making right there, and it's going to take 2 years to get him there. I'm committed to it. And then you hope you set the stage for and bring in people that are leaders that do the same thing, that go, man, I can see a Timothy there, or a Stephen there, or a Titus there. Maybe somebody like, Barnabas, who saw Mark being cast off because Paul got ticked at him, and he's like, there's some value there, and I'm gonna bring him along. And we see the results later. Mark was like, he's the best dude for the job right now. So Barnabas saw there's a cast off, and he might have deserved it. Sound like he probably deserved it,
Right.
but Barnabas was this encourager who was like, I can redeem that.
Yeah.
Because we're all gifted to have extra grace for certain people that, like, sometimes I'm like, I don't have any idea how you have grace for that. That person drives me crazy. But I'm so glad you do.
Yeah.
And then people are like, Scott, what in the world? Why do you keep giving that person a chance? I'm like, I got grace here. And you don't have to. Because Jesus has me here right now. Man, that's humanity.
I love that part of, it is the global church. We see Paul writing about that, how we're all a body. But then that expresses itself in a local church.
Right.
And I think the failure of some local expressions of the church fail because they do have that, like, mono body part going on, where we're only the mouthpiece.
Right.
We're only the hands and feet.
Right.
And I think it's grating, it's frustrating, because obviously working in a body that is diverse is really frustrating.
Right.
Right? Because it's like, oh, well, why is Scott teaching that way? Yeah, Scott should be teaching more hellfire and brimstone.
Right.
or well, why are we singing those songs? Those songs are heretical. Or these are just
things people say.
Stupid things people say. But that's the beauty of it, and that's, I think, the mess of the body of Christ. I mean,
I love the messy.
It's so cool.
Number one, I'm messy.
Right.
So I'm glad that I'm not an outlier in Christianity.
And I think people, hold on.
My marriage can be messy. My kids messy. I love, and it shows there is one greater than the messy.
And I think people as a whole, outside of your nitpicky, neat-nick Baptists, I think I'll make fun of charismatics later. Okay.
Hey,
Assembly of God.
that's my peeps. Not Assembly of God.
No.
Independent.
But I think people genuinely appreciate, maybe very uncomfortable with, but are drawn to, wait, did he just say his wife had an affair as the pastor? There's something to that, of the mess that people are. We're not condoning or celebrating the mess.
Right.
But we are expressing, this is the mess that I was in, and maybe currently am in, right? Here's what I am currently struggling with in my walk with Jesus, in my walk with others.
Because imagine somebody coming, it's either they got 2 kids, wife's pregnant, he's an electrician, moved to the area, they can barely keep up with bills and time, and now their kids are doing sports stuff, and it matters, but they know it's not the biggest thing in the world, and they're exhausted, and they feel like they're failing. I'm not as good of a husband, and how are my kids going to make it in this world? And they come to church, and we say, none of us ever have problems because we follow Jesus. Look how pretty we are. and we are the pristine representations of all humanity to the world, be like us. Is he going to feel like he's welcome there? Or if we get up there and say, hey, man, we're dealing with fear issues today. Anybody, freak out this week about their kids in this? Or, man, we got anger issues, and we're going to see what Paul says about dealing with anger. Anybody want to like drop kick their kid this week? And he's like, what?
Is he talking about child abuse? Are there policemen?
But
in
like
here?
he's going to feel, or like, I felt hopeless this week after this was brought out on the news, and I'm scared, and I came to, we're here to worship a God of hope. But man, we know that some of you are feeling hopeless this week. That person's going to feel like, I belong here. It's messy with hope.
So you have the messiness that's uncomfortable to Baptists, and you have if you are not this way, I told you I'd bring it around to Assembly of God, and you only operate as a Christian through this singular doctrine or several doctrines that we have. That's what a mature Christian is.
Right.
Both ostracize a demographic of people.
Right.
Well, I don't speak in tongues. Wait, I don't feel like I have that gift. Wait, so am I a less than Christian? And then over here you have, wait, my life isn't that neat and pristine, nice. Am I not a mature Christian?
Right.
So you have it on both sides.
Right.
And it's I think the vulnerability, the messiness, and by messy, I don't think we're just talking about sin. We're just talking about messiness, right? Like of church, of relationships, of part of it doctrine, part of it sin. But being okay with messy, which is really where we find unity. Like I think it was I think maybe Bill Johnson. He says, we're looking for unity, not uniformity.
Right.
And I love that distinction.
Oh, yeah.
Where unity has to exist amidst diversity. Uniformity is everyone looks the same, acts the same. Okay, I want to go back to something you said a while ago about growth. So you made the statement about how if you're not training people up, if you're not looking at these other areas, dealing with growth, that you're not going to grow. So I want to pick your brain on.
Now, I think you can grow, but I don't know if you can grow healthy.
Okay, so that's what I was going to.
Numbers are different than.
So that's what I want to pick your brain
maturity.
On. Is okay. So you have a church over here. Let's call it a mega church, and they're about as deep as a puddle in Texas. Okay, numbers, growth.
Right.
You have a hillbilly church over here of 15 people in a community of 30.
Right.
They're not going to grow.
Right.
But this over here is booming. I mean, they got a website and everything. So that's what I want to talk on, is whether you're talking about extremes aside, a larger church that has multiple services or just has multiple smaller ministries within the church. And then over here, you have a house church of, I'm talking best case scenario on both, okay? I'm not being sarcastic.
Both are healthy.
Yeah. Over here, a house church of like 15, 20 people, you do have leaders. They're observing some of these traditional makeups of the church. Communion, they've, all
right.
One paint best case. So I guess how do you look at and determine health and growth in those two environments? Let's say this megachurch is on the outskirts of a large city, and this house church is within a local city of millions of people. Okay, what do you? I guess.
I mean, I think you got to live out. Are they living out the basics of the gospel? Are they living out when we say love God? Well, that's broad. So love God, love people. So the great commandment: love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength, and love people, love others as yourself. What does that look like? How are you living? Is it like, well, I love God because I read my devotional every day on the Bible app, and I attend. I don't know if that's loving God. It's doing God, doing the God stuff, but like, am I pursuing God and seeking the Holy Spirit to speak into my life? And am I asking Him to let the fruit grow, abundantly for other people to feast off of what's coming out of my life? Am I diving into the gifts that He's given me, Spirit filled, and am I living them out for the cause of the kingdom because I love other people? That's you might not grow much because maybe you can't numbers wise, but you're multiplying the kingdom. And then are you doing the Great Commission? Are you going and telling others about Jesus? And when they get saved, you're baptizing them and growing them in the Lord by discipling them. That's huge. Whether you can grow or not, whether you add numbers or not, are you making an impact in this broken world because of Jesus? And then are you a welcoming center for the seekers and the hurting and the wounded to come in and find Jesus, find healing, find hope, find respite? Same thing over here. I mean, are you just like, man, this is a great church. He's a great preacher. Everybody knows him. It's fun to come here and say that's my church, and then I go home. Well, you're not. You're not. Maybe there's. I would guess there's tons within the church that are, but I think maybe you can hide easier there. One of my best friends used to go to a mega church up in Dallas a number of years ago, and it was a multi-site with a TV. So there's one live thing, and the rest of them were TV. It was like 10 of them. And he's like, man, I love to come in 5 minutes after it starts, sit at the back wall, and leave during the last prayer so nobody talks to me. And I'm like, why? And he said, I'm supposed to go to church. I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're not just supposed to go to church. And you're getting nothing out of it. His life was breaking apart around him. And he's like, but I was raised to do right. We were raised together, so... like, I know how he was raised, and he's like, I was raised to do right, and that's one of the do rights. And then, but he's like, it's great, no one talks to me. So now he tried to be hidden and not talked to, but they also never talked to him.
Right.
And he eventually, after 4 years, didn't go to that church anymore.
Two challenges that I see, and again, I'm kind of maybe oversimplifying it all. Over here for the large church that has online availability, what's your challenge to people who are like, oh yeah, I go to that church on YouTube?
Yeah, I think you got to work to tell them that is not the way to do.
Why? Because
there's no community.
Isn't that the family reunion though? And I have...
not really.
But I have baseball on, and I have people there that I talk with.
I mean, if I call my auntie when she's sitting under the pavilion at the family reunion, I'm not there. So that's not...
So
it's just not church. Now, sometimes people are sick, or they're traveling, or they work on an oil field, and so they got to tune in when they're not home. I get that. But if it's like, that's my life, that is it's not Christianity. It's not even Christianity. It's convenient religion. It's just not healthy.
So you, even with all of the online accessibility that we have nowadays, you're saying there's something vitally important of the face-to-face.
Has to be. It just has to be. There's just not, I mean, I would imagine God and he could have figured out a way. I know man had to pay for man's sin. Okay, so Jesus had to become a man. But like, he could have done it less relational, less personal.
I mean, everything he does is
but he could have
deeply messy and relational.
I know, but he could have figured out a way. He could have been like, well, I'm just going to send Jesus is going to be born into a rich family and never have a problem. And he's just going to have a nice life, and then he's going to die. and he's still going to live a perfect life and not sin. But he made everything deeply personal. He got into the lives of the messiest people on the planet around him. There's no group of religion, tax collectors, prostitutes, demon-possessed people, selfish, sailors. I mean, you pick what could be messy. He got right in there. He didn't stick to the neat and clean and fringy suburbs.
When you have to.
So we have to be in there.
Even the neat and clean suburbs is.
I know, we know it's whitewashed tombs, but
right.
It can be. It's not all that way. That's a terrible thing to say.
If you live in a suburb, you're a whitewashed tomb.
Get behind me, Satan.
Quote. No, but what I do mean by that is I think we do. It's funny, in the American society have this perception of suburbs as this clean facade. They have their life together, and studies have shown it's not that at all.
Jesus got right involved with people in the messiness of life, and if he did that, who in the world am I to say I won't?
Or I don't need it.
I don't need it, or this is how I do it. I know it's not what Jesus did, but he didn't have Facebook back then.
Even
that's it. No, it's just no. It is nowhere in Scripture that we're told to mail it in. Never, ever. It's terrible.
You mean Facebook Messenger then?
Yes. I mean, I have a friend, mega church in Austin, and leads the worship ministry, and they have been fantastic over the years. But when COVID happened, because of their demographics, they fully shut down for a year and went online only. And they have the money to make it happen at the highest level. And they couldn't get anybody to come back after a year. And I said, what in the world did you... I was like, why? That is so dumb. You're dumb. And he said, if I could go back, we would tape record it like old school, like the old click. And we would tape record a message, and I'd sing a couple songs, and it would sound so bad. And we'd put that like on just a little radio stream. That's all we'd give them for the minimal time, because we were required for 6 weeks by our governor, and we honored that. They kept it for another 46 weeks. And he said we blew it.
So, okay, so the one side is, and I think as an infinite God with infinite amounts of wisdom and forethought, I believe he saw and said, you know what, messy is better than
Pristine.
Well, I'll say it a little bit more controversial way. Relationship is better than my sovereignty.
Yeah.
Which is...
Yeah.
Sorry, Baptist, but...
But isn't that why he gave free will?
Right. Well...
Free will's messy.
Depends on how you talk.
Sovereignty with no free will, where I choose through election, then there's no messy there, because it's going to happen. But that's not a relational, loving God.
And you look at what was God before creation. So God just by himself.
Perfect relationship. The three of them and the angels got to enjoy watching that.
Well, even before angels.
Yeah.
Even before angels. You don't have him sovereign over anything. You have him in relationship.
Right.
Which is, to me, a deeper nature and reality of God than...
It goes back further. Relationship goes back further than sovereignty.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So my other side, I told you I'd go over to the house church side, okay? Small group, whatever. Yeah, house church, be honest. So with that side, okay, over here it was getting in a relationship. Oh, over here. So again, house church is the only way to do it because that we are deeply relational. And so churches that are bigger than 25 people, because you can't be in relationship with more than 25 people, we are the ones that are the true church, or we are the ones that are the true expression, if you use that term, of the church. What's your...
Well, I don't know what you do with Peter and when the Holy Spirit fell and 3,000 were added in a single day. I don't know what you do with that, man. Peter was way off. He screwed up. I don't even know why they put that in the Bible. First of all, you have to discount so much Bible because the church was growing like crazy. You have to discount so much that happens around the globe in communist and terroristic nations. I mean, Afghanistan is right now the fastest growing church in the history of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's crazy, dude.
and they're not sticking with 25 in each house. They're just doing whatever happens, right? That's number centric in the same way that somebody's like, we're a mega church of 25,000. I don't know if they talk like that, but
Yay!
but yeah, I mean, if God calls your church to be a house church, okay. Again, you better have multiple leaders. You better have a leadership structure according to the Bible, and submit to God through those and then those leaders, and you better not try to cap it, not like bust a cap in it, but like cap the growth. That doesn't make any sense.
It depends on if you're in the inner city or not.
Yo. But the church is meant to always grow. Yeah. Now, if you're constantly sending out people to start new home churches out of your growth, you stay 25 because you're starting 25 other churches in that year. Fantastic. You're actually growing and you're staying. You know, if your sending capacity is as fast as your growing capacity, that's totally fine. I think that's probably better than fine.
Right.
I think that's spectacular.
Right.
And it's very Jesus-y. So, but you better not be like, we're this because they're that. That is never healthy.
Yeah.
I mean, we did, like, I grew up, I'm never going to be like my dad. That was an unhealthy thing. Unresolved in my mind, and then I became my own God. And then I became my dad anyway. And then I got restored and redeemed, and yeah.
So I think that's the big key, kind of regardless of where you fall on any church or community spectrum, is that any time if I do the comparison game, whether I'm less than or better than, I'm less than because, well, I don't have that many people coming to my ministry, but they have that many. Right? That's a being, not demonstrative, diminishing of me. Or we only have 25 people. Or we have 25,000 people, so we are obviously doing something right.
Right.
Well,
that's when you put a cap in.
Again, only if you're in Chicago. So no, but like both can play the game. We're small because we're doing what Jesus is telling us to do. We're large because we're doing what Jesus told us to do. What's funny is even saying we're doing what Jesus told us to, so this is why we're doing that, or we're better than them. You've immediately lost what you're doing for Jesus. Right. Because you just said we're better.
If you're like, we are where we are right now because this is what Jesus is calling us to, win.
But we're better than you.
And next year, if we're this or we're that, win. If we grew, if our church got smaller because we planted another church, win. If our church got bigger because more people got saved or moved and found a life-giving community, win. But it's only because of Jesus.
If ever you add the clause, we're doing it better, or here's one, we're doing it more biblically.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Watch out. Better watch out. It's a dangerous thing.
It's a
I think you certainly quench the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
In bringing that daily life.
Well, and James really talks about this, and I've read James so many times, but I just stumbled upon this verse. You know when you read the Bible and all of a sudden
so
the verse
weird. Happened to me recently too.
How have I not read that?
I know.
So in James, he makes this clause of now it's gonna escape me. Shoot.
Tune in next week when Nate remembers.
It's a new segment that we're gonna do. When Nate remembers a verse. No, he's talking about just the whole idea of judgment and basic. Oh, he says, so you follow the law of judgment, which he's referring to the law. He's like, great, you're going to be judged by the law of judgment. My encouragement is to be judged by the law of love.
Yeah.
And he's talking about love and being gracious and like merciful towards others. He goes, so if you're going to be judged against the law of judgment, you will be judged. If you're going to be judged against the law of love, you'll have mercy because you show mercy. And so and you know my story.
Right.
And I'm learning to fall on that side of things, of giving people...
I think you're more than learning. Knowing your story, if justice and mercy were presented 12 years ago, or you would have been like, what mercy?
But in my brain, because I know my own thoughts, I'm like, oh, I'm still working on it.
We have our fallback,
but I think that's the thing is in whatever community you land in, and I think what we've been talking about is healthy principles of you can't have intimate, vulnerable relationship to a screen. Right. So watching
you can't even really have it to a stage in a real. I mean, you can have a moment that gets you there, but then go somewhere and unpack that with 10 to 20.
Right. But I would always just land on whatever your ministry, church is, even workplace. If you land on the law of judging someone else's motives, just know that's the law that God judges you by. Yeah. If you're going to land on the side of judging someone in love and mercy, and I would call it giving them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to assume the best about their
believe
motives.
In the best.
Yeah. Then that's going to be how you are judged as well. Dude, thank you so much.
Yeah.
It was a fun conversation.
I know. It snowed outside today for us. Isn't that weird? Not next week.
The thing we don't speak of happened.
I know. The word we shall not name.
The word we shall not. It's interesting. In Narnia.
And you and I came to work today.
I know.
Nobody else is here. I actually saw somebody walk around.
I actually have a meeting with someone who didn't want to drive, and me and your wife were making fun of her. She'll go unnamed right now.
I know who it is.
She does listen to this.
She drives 10 yards further than me. Come on, man.
But she was raised in Southern California.
I was raised in South Texas.
Well, you spend a ton of time in northern.
I don't talk about that.
We
don't talk about those things.
Remember your favorite place of Georgia? No. Wasilla?
Oh man.
No.
So painful.
Omaha.
There's some painful moments.
Yeah.
Snow.
All right, dude. Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it. All right. Goodbye.